对，让他们可以开始了。哎，方阳老师可以了吧？
好，可以开始了是吧？
可以了，老师，没问题。
好，谢谢。Yes,
So we can get started.
各位朋友，大家好。
Distinguished guest, good
欢迎大
afternoon.
家来参加今天
Welcome to the afternoon session. This is ZC. My name is Yan Zhinong. With Zhinong Food Security Consultancy. I'm the owner of Zhinong. I'm also the consultant for Walmart. It's my pleasure to be here, to be the host. I would like to extend my gratitude to the opening of this summit. Not an easy task for us to organize these big events under COVID-19, and we are very honored to have 7 speakers with us today. And we're going to discuss the food content material, the assessments, probiotics, and the food energy, and we're going to discuss each of the topics. And you can leave your question in the Q&A session. And we're going to hand over the questions to our speakers. So without further ado, let's start after the session. Please allow me to introduce our first speaker, Professor Aka House. And Professor Haas is with the Authentic Food at Max Robert Institute. And you can find her detailed introduction in our booklet. So I would like to give the floor to Professor Aka Haas. 阿克教授呢，现在把时间就交给您。那么首先呢，我想感谢我们的组织方，那么感谢对我的邀请。那我非常高兴的向给大家介绍一下德国联邦营养与食品马克思布鲁纳研究所。不知道大家看得清楚不清楚？那我想先介绍一下欧洲的食品掺假的这样的网络。那我不知道大家对于食品掺假呢有多少的了解？那我们会讲到食品的安全性，因为食品的安全跟我们的身体健康息息相关。那么还有一些可能你不经意造成的一些食品掺假的问题。那么可能还有一些潜在的问题。那可能他有的是为了获得财务上的一些利益。那么这些呢，可能就和就是他做食物掺假的一些动力背后的原因。那当然了，还有一些价格的原因。那么2013年，2018年有一个 melamine 的这样的一个 世界上比较著名的食物掺假的事件。那我们看到这是欧洲的食品掺假链的网络。那么有3个主要的目标。那么很多欧洲的国家都是我们的会员国。那我们会联合一起去执行法律法规。那同时呢，帮助我们更好的去支持政府的工作。那我们看到呢，有一些机构呢也是积极的参与起来，比如说 EFSA 和 COLAF。那么这就是我们的一个网络。
And is also engaged with joint operations with Europol. These operations are, for example, called OPSON operations. You maybe have already heard about that. Let's go a little bit closer into Germany. So if you look in Germany, which institutions in Germany are food related. So if you talk about food safety, food control, food authenticity, and so on, you have on the national level, you have the Federal Ministry of Food and Agriculture. And below this ministry, you have different institutions that deal with food control. We have on the one hand federal authorities on the left-hand side, mainly focus on the Federal Office of Consumer Protection and Food Safety. I think a few of somebody of this institution will also give a talk in the next days. In the middle, you see further research institutes which deal with food, but also with plants and animals. And you see mainly in the middle, the Max Rubner Institute. This is where the National Reference Center for Authentic Food is located. I will come to that, of course, in the next slides. And on the right-hand side, you see legally independent institutions, especially here to say the Federal Institute for Risk Assessment, the BFR. I think the next speaker will come from this institution. If you go down on federal state level, we deal with official control laboratories who do the analysis, who take the samples, and who also do risk assessment of the food control samples. And if you go further down again, you have on district level, you have inspections, sampling, and sanctions institutions who support the official laboratories with the sampling and the inspection of the food samples. If you look on the food fraud network again in Germany, the contact point for the European food fraud network is located at the Federal Office of Consumer Protection and Food Safety, but of course also the National Reference Center for Authentic Food is closely connected to this food fraud network in Germany. So that was the introduction. Now I won't go into further detail how the German National Reference Center is structured and what are our main goals. I already mentioned the EU controls regulation. This is a regulation that was implemented in 2017, and it's the first time that authenticity control is also mentioned in a EU regulation. And what you can see here is some remarks from this EU controls regulation, and you see that you see in the first reason, you see that it's also said that food and feed have to be safe and wholesome, and that activities which might have an impact on the safety, but also on the protection of consumers' interest in relation to food and food information have to be taken into account. And here in the next reason, you see that especially fraudulent practices are mentioned, and to fight against food fraud, the authorities should have access to updated, reliable and consistent technical data, to research findings, new techniques and expertise. And for this, in this controls regulation, the European Union member states are recommended to implement reference centers for the authenticity and integrity of the agri-food chain. And then when you go further in the regulation, if you go to Article 97, there is given again the designation of European Union reference centers for the authenticity and integrity of the agri-food chain. So what has that to do with the national reference center? So we are not a European reference center. Up to now, there is no European reference center available, but the German National Reference Center is based on this EU regulation. And the mission of the European reference centers as well of the German reference center is the support of the official control bodies in the fight against food fraud, also with respect to consumer protection. If you go to Article 98 in this regulation, you see, I hope it's not too small, you see different responsibilities of these reference centers. It's in A, you see it's about communication and coordination. So you should provide specialized knowledge or spread specialized knowledge. You should provide specific analysis for the authorities. You should help to implement databases and also to provide references. And again, you should spread information about food fraud into the public authorities. So if you look at the German National Reference Center for Authentic Food, in this slide, you see the structure. In the upper part, you see the management level. I don't want to go into detail on this part, but on the lower part, you see 3 big pillars for the activities and the goals of the reference center. On the left part, you see we have one pillar that is dealing with the network, or with building a network of experts. So that means it's all about information spreading, communication and coordination. The second pillar is about references and databases. So there we are talking about implementation of databases and so on. I will go into further detail later on. And the right big pillar is the so-called analytical competence. Here it's all about method development and method validation. So if there are methods missing for food fraud detection, we try to support the food authorities with the method development in this case. Compared to Article 98 of the EU controls regulation, you see that all these given goals are also represented in this structure of the NRZ Authent. If you look at the technical equipment, it's not that big. The reason I will show you in the next slide. At the moment, we have a few own instruments. We have an FT-NIR instrument that is located in Detmold. We have an IRMS instrument located in Kiel in the north of Germany. We have a qPCR instrument. We plan to get an NMR instrument next year. And we also plan for next year to purchase a dPCR instrument. Why is this sufficient for our work? I told you that the National Reference Center is located at the Max Rubner Institute in Germany. The Max Rubner Institute is a federal institute dealing with health and nutrition and food. The Max Rubner Institute has 4 to 5 sites over Germany with different institutes. There are 10 institutes in total on these 5 sites. with different goals. And the National Reference Center for Authentic Food is embedded in the infrastructure of the Max Rubner Institute all over Germany. And so we can also use the infrastructure of these other institutes and also use the instruments there. So looking at my teams, you see I have two teams that are located in the very north of Germany. We have the teams that are dealing with DNA-based analysis and with IRMS-based analysis. They are located in Kiel. We have one team that is dealing with FT-NRI analysis, which is located in Detmold. We have two teams that are located in Karlsruhe. This is the team that is dealing with the network coordination pillar on the very left side on the slide before. And the NMR analytics team is also in Karlsruhe. Myself, I'm located in Kulmbach. This is the headquarter of the NRZ Authent. And in addition, on this side, we have also the teams that are dealing with the bioinformatics part and the team which is dealing with the mass spectrometry-based analysis. In the next slide, I just want to give you a few examples what the three pillars are doing at the moment and what are we already in our work. So in the first pillar, that was the network of experts. You have one goal is pooling and providing scientific knowledge for public authorities. We can do that on the one hand, of course, via the homepage. So this is free for everybody, not only for the public authorities, but also for industry, research, and so on. But we also implemented an exchange platform to spread information. For this, we use an already existing platform of the Federal Office of Consumer and Protection of Food Safety. And there we provide different information to the members who have access to this platform. For example, quarterly we publish a so-called journal scanner where we recommend publications that deal with authenticity and where our authenticity experts reviewed these articles and recommend to read that to the public authorities. In addition, we provide frequent exchange and training. So we organize workshops in every year. First of all, we have every year a so-called workshop in the autumn, which is focusing on general topics. As you can see here, the first workshop was in 2017. This year, the workshop is in November planned, and this year we present projects and we also deal with the topic of implementing databases for food fraud detection. These workshops are in German, but if you are interested and are able to understand German, please feel free to contact me and we can send you the invitation. In addition, every early summer, we organize an expert workshop where we focus on a special topic that can either be a food matrix or can also be a special method. What you can see here below, for example, last year, we focused on stable isotope analysis for food fraud detection. And this year we had a workshop about honey authenticity. In addition, this first pillar is also about coordination. So we try to interact or to serve as interface between German expert networks and organizations, as well as also activities on European level. So this is just an example how the network looks like. Of course, all these players have also a connection to each other, but we try on national level, you can see here the
大家在这
federal
张图中就可以看到，比如说像 BMEL，然后呢，我们也可以和 NORZ，这都是国家层面的一些联系、一些协同。然后我们可以去解决在整个欧盟的层级上的一些问题。那不仅仅是在这个食品的层面上，我们当然还包括一些调研。接下来我们短暂的去看一下下一个环节，想给大家讲一讲数据库这一块儿。那如果大家之前有听过一些用一些特殊的方法，然后包括像对比考证，然后包括引用，然后拿这些方法帮助我们得到结果，然后进行分析。所以呢，对比分析其实还是很重要的一环，包括我们如何去维护我们的数据库，包括这种对比的一致性如何去保持，在德国的范围内。那这里面还有一个一致性的评估，那我们会在德国去抽取一些样本，来进行整个数据的分析。那从今年开始，在6月份，我们就开始进行了一些数据库的实行。那我们采用了一些不同的方法，然后来提取这些样本，然后呢去进行一些实验。比如说我们曾经去针对这个蜂蜜。In addition to these analytical databases, we also have so-called knowledge database projects. In this case, we do not collect analytical results, but we collect knowledge. For example, the first collection is about which official control laboratory in Germany has which technical or instrumental infrastructure, so which methods are used there, and which food is analyzed in which official control laboratories. This is one knowledge database, and the second knowledge database we start to build up is the crop plant collection in German botanical gardens. So there we try to collect the information which botanical garden in Germany has which crop plant available and can serve as reference material for method development. So you can then ask there, for example, if you need this or that plant for method validation as reference, you can ask there to get this reference material. In addition, we support official control laboratories with data interpretation and also with data evaluation. How we do that? On the one hand, we support method validation, which is in Germany done in so-called working groups, paragraph 64 working groups of the Federal Office of Consumer Protection and Food Safety. In these working groups, the method validation for official methods take place. And we support these working groups with by our team and also by providing knowledge, but also providing material I will show you on the next slide. And also we try to support with publications. At the moment, there is a white paper under construction which deals with validation of non-targeted methods. I told you in the last slide that we also support method validation. And very often for method validation, you need spiked food samples where you know how
the food was adulterated, how much of the adulterant is present in the food. And this can then be used for method validation. And we have the big advantage that the Max Rubner Institute has pilot plants where we can produce food products, for example, cheese and also bread. And we use that for the preparation of spiked food samples. At the moment, for example, we produce dairy products. We produce milk, yogurt, and cheese from sheep's and goat's milk. And these products are spiked with different amounts of cow's milk so that we can validate a method for the detection of cow's milk in sheep's and goat products. The same is true for spelt wheat products. There we produce at the moment breads, cookies, and pasta made from spelt wheat, but spiked with different amounts of soft wheat so that this can also be used for method validation, for example, in the working groups of the Federal Office. Looking at further reference materials, we see us as interface to existing collections of authentic food reference materials on national level. For example, in Germany, you have the Federal Plant Variety Office, but also, of course, on European and international level, for example, the Institute for Reference Materials and Measurements of the JRC of the European Commission. So in this case, we do not have the reference materials on our own, but we coordinate between people who need reference material and we get them into connection with people who can serve reference material. No? Oops. So looking at the last pillar, just the analytical competence. So it's all about method development. And here I can give you just a few examples because time is running out. As you see here, 4 different examples where we start method development, looking at the topic of geographic origin detection. We develop a method for the differentiation of organic and conventional eggs in Germany by stable isotope analysis. At the moment, looking at way of production topics, we have one project at the moment that is dealing with the development of an NMR-based method for differentiation of fresh and frozen fish. Looking at the topic of valuable components in foods, we implement a method for mass spectrometry-based identification of ingredients of animal origin in vegetarian and vegan products. And finally, my last example is about animal and plant species varieties identification. Here at the moment, we work together with other members in the implementation, development, and validation of an NGS-based method for animal identification in meat and meat products. My last slide is about expert working groups and committees. So in addition to our work looking at method development, I already showed in a few examples that we support the method validation, but also the method standardization, normalization in Germany, as well as in European working groups by being member of different working groups and committees. And what you can see here on the left side are the paragraph 64 working groups on national level that deal with authenticity topics. And you can see that a lot of these working groups, or many of my team many people of my team are also member of these working groups on national level. And on the right-hand side, you see DIN and CEN working groups, which are a European and national level for standardization. These are also all working groups dealing with food authenticity, and also we see that we also connected to all these working groups. So in summary, I hope I could show you about the National Reference Center for Authentic Food, that this institution is based on the EU controls regulation and the given definitions there for European reference centers. I hope I could show you that the NRZ-Authent supports especially the German official control bodies in the fight against food fraud, for example, by the development and validation of new analytical methods, but also in the field of reference material, spiked food samples, analytical databases, as well as knowledge databases. And first pillar, by disseminating research findings and technical innovations, and so by supporting national, European, but also international networkings. That was the first pillar, and I showed you all the workshops we were offering. So I thank you for your attention, and I'm happy for questions for my presentation. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hess. This is a very great introduction about the MRI Institute for the, and for food authenticity, food fraud, adulteration is all important as a global hot topic. So thanks for sharing with us, and a lot of good information on the good of the database, testing technology, methodology. It's all very, very helpful for us to learn about the food fraud prevention. So we need all this work. Yeah. So we have a question. Are you aware of any of the similar food fraud authenticity research institute like MRI globally?
Yes, so I am not aware of that. I know that Austria in Europe is starting to implement a national reference center for authentic food. On European level, I'm not aware, but I think this is coming, and I would be very interested if any of the audience, anyone in the audience knows something going on global level, if they contact me, because I'm very happy to get into contact to similar institutions all over the world and start also this network on global level.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think that in China, we also have a research institute doing similar work, and I can make the connection later on with the president of the Research Institute for Food Authenticity. Yeah, and also in the States, Michigan State University, Professor John Spink. Also,
yeah, I know this name.
yeah. He also has the Fraud Institute as well. So I can make that connection for you. Well,
that would be great.
Yeah. Thank you very much for the great presentation, and let's keep in touch.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then we move to our next speaker. Next speaker is Dr. Steven Merkel. Steven Merkel 博士是德国联邦风险评估。
Dr. Steven Merkel is the head of UNICEF Food Contact Materials from the Germany Federal Institute for Risk Assessment, which is the BFR. Actually, we all understand that the contact material food attach great importance role in the food safety. And Dr. Stefan Muckel currently is responsible for the food contact materials, especially. So we're really interested in this topic. Very honored to have Stefan Muckel today. And he would like to talk about the risk assessment paper and board used as the food contact material.
So I hope you can see my slides. First, I want to say thank you for the possibility to speak here today. And yes, thank you for the nice introduction. I want to talk about risk assessment of paper and board used as food contact material. Paper and board becomes more and more important due to the strategy of the European Commission to avoid plastic food contact material, and as a substitute, paper and board is used. I will start with a short introduction of the BFR, the German Federal Institute for Risk Assessment. The BFR is located in Berlin with 3 locations. I'm sitting in this building close to this window here. And the BFR has a long history. History starts in 1876 with the Reich Imperial Health Office. And then this institute was renamed and existed till 1945. And after the Second World War, the institution was renamed once more into a federal health office, and under this name this institution existed till 1994, and then it was renamed and a bit restructured and existed under another very long name till 2002. And in 2002, a law on the reorganization of consumer health protection and food safety was established in Germany, and risk assessment and risk management was divided. And the risk assessment, the Federal Office of Consumer Protection and Food Safety was founded, and for the risk assessment, the BFR was founded. What is the concept? The concept is the separation of risk assessment and risk communication from the risk management. And what was the object of this separation? The German government wanted to have a qualified scientific risk assessment, and this risk assessment should be free from influence from politics, business, and society. So the risk assessment should be independent, and the government wanted to have a clear responsibility regarding decisions and conflicts, and the information from a neutral party. And also the government wanted to have a structured procedure for the risk assessment. Some facts about the BFR. The BFR is a body under public law in the responsibility of the German Federal Ministry of Food and Agriculture. And as I said, the BFR is independent in its scientific assessment and on its research. At the BFR, we have around 1,000 people working, and mostly 50% of the BFR staff are scientists. And the BFR has an annual budget of 100 million euro, and this includes an annual research fund of around 16 million euro in 2018. And there are additional third-party funds of around 5 million euro. And it's important to say that all this money that is used at the BFR is public money because of the independence of the BFR. And risk communication is also important for the BFR. And in 2018, the BFR made opinions and risk assessment more than 3,000. And results of the research were published in journals with more than 200 in 2018. Here you can see the fields of competence of the BFR. The BFR is responsible for the risk assessment in the area of the food safety, biological safety, the safety of substances and preparation, experimental toxicology. The BFR makes also research to avoid animal testing. And the BFR is also responsible for the risk assessment and the safety of consumer products. And as I already said, the BFR has the risk communication. That is a very important part, that you communicate what you do. I work in the area for the chemical and product safety, and here you can see the different substances or things that keep us busy. We make in the department where I work assessment of chemicals under the REACH and CLP regulation, and we also make a risk assessment for the safety of consumer products, and this includes, of course, the food packaging, but also cosmetic, perfumes, cleansing agent, textiles, toys, tattoos, tobacco products, and other commodities. And also research activities are done in the department where I work. And we are very lucky to have the National Reference Laboratory for Food Contact Materials here in the BFR. That means for us that we can also make some experimental work in the laboratory. Now about the food contact materials in general. In Europe, we have the framework, it's called Framework Regulation for Food Contact Materials, the Regulation 1935 from 2004. And this regulation explains what is a food contact material. These are materials that are intended to be brought into contact with food, or materials that are already in contact with food, or that can reasonably be expected to be brought into contact with food. So for point C, an example would be the napkins. They can reasonably be expected to be brought into contact with food. So in Germany, we see napkins also as food contact material, for example. The Article 3 is, from my point of view, the most important article. And this article says that from food contact materials should not transfer their constituents to food in quantities which endanger human health. So this is the most important thing. So this is a risk-based regulation. The framework regulation also says that for certain materials and articles can be covered by specific measures. Here in bold, these materials are covered by specific measures on European level. Most important is the plastics regulation. This includes a positive list with substances that are evaluated and can be, those substances can then be produced, used for production of plastic food contact materials. And for paper and board, we do not have a specific measure on European level. And the Article 6 then says that in case there are no specific measures on European level, then the member states can maintain or adopt national provisions to regulate those materials like paper and board. In Germany, we have the BFR recommendations, and those recommendations are for substances and materials that are not regulated on European level. And this includes some substances that are not included in the plastics regulation, like catalysts or initiators or emulsifiers, and also other materials like rubber, silicone, paper and board, as I said, but also other materials like artificial sausage casings, fillers, or temperature-resistant polymer coating systems. The BFR recommendations, they are not legal norms, so this is not a law, but the BFR recommendations are based on German and European law, and they represent the current state of scientific and technical knowledge on the conditions under which Article 3 of Regulation 1945-2004, the framework regulation, is met, and the BFR recommendations can be accessed free of charge via the BFR website. This is how it looks like. Here's a list of the different materials. For example, here silicones or paper and board. And then you can open a PDF file and see which substance is listed there. So what substance can be used to produce a safe food contact material made of paper and board or silicone. The industry or companies can also add new substances to the BFR recommendations, and we established an application process. We have a deadline for the submission of applications. This is the 1st of December and 1st of July. And then the BFR makes the assessment of the analytical and toxicological data from the dossiers that are sent to the BFR. And then these dossiers are discussed with external experts from different institutions. And we have such a meeting twice a year in April and November. And then the BFR comes to a decision. And finally, when a substance will be added to the BFR recommendation, then this will be published in the journal Bundesgesundheitsblatt. And then we will change the BFR recommendation accordingly. For the application of a new substance, we need quite a lot of data. And for this, the note for guidance from the European Food Safety Authority is used. So normally this was developed for adding new substances to the plastics regulation, but this can also be used for other materials like paper and board. And what we need to have is a characterization of the substance that should be added or will be added to the BFR recommendation. And of course, the intended use of the substance. And what is most important for us is the migration data of the substance into the food. And this also includes the analytical data and analytical methods that are used for measurement of the migration data. And we need then also toxicological data. And in the end of the application process, we want to have a certain amount of reference substance. Transfer of substances from food contact materials into food. And here I would like to show so this is not that easy. The first way a substance can be transferred from the packaging into food is the direct food contact. And then it's called migration. And there are many factors that can influence the amount of migration. First, of course, the concentration of the substance, but also the layer thickness of the packaging material, the material itself, the diffusion properties, what kind of material do I have, then the type of substance, the molecule size, the partition coefficient of the substance between material and food, Then the food, so this is determined by the intended application, and time and temperature conditions, of course, and the ratio between surface area and filling volume. Another possibility of migration is the migration via gas phase for volatile substances like mineral oils. And this is most important for dry foods with a high specific surface, like ground flour, for example. And a third way is the set-off. So a set-off can be produced during storage upon reels or in piles, and then the food, the contact of the outer side with the side of the for the food contact, and then you will also have a certain amount of migration. As I said, we also need toxicological data. So here we have a tiered approach. The more substance migrates, the more toxicological data is needed. So for a very low migration, so up to 50 microgram migration of the substance into 1 kilogram of food, we only need 2 mutagenicity studies in vitro. And for higher migration, so between 550 microgram up to 5 milligram per kilogram food, we need, in addition to these 2 in vitro tests, an additional 90-day oral toxicity study and data to demonstrate the absence of potential for accumulation in men. And for migration higher than 5 milligram up to 60 milligram per kilogram food, we need then additional studies on absorption, distribution, metabolism, and excretion, and also studies on reproduction and developmental toxicity, and studies on long-term toxicity and carcinogenicity. For paper and board, we have 4 different recommendations. This is dependent on the intended use of the paper and board. We have recommendation 36 for paper and board that is in contact with food up to 90 degrees. So this is you can say normal food packaging, for example, kitchen towels or napkins. Then we have another recommendation, 36.1. This is used for cooking papers, hot filter papers, and filter layers. This is mostly used for hot filter papers like tea bags or coffee filters. And then recommendation 36.2 for paper and paperboard for baking purposes. So this is mostly used for baking paper. And then we have recommendation 36.3 for absorber pads based on cellulosic fibers for food packaging. We have some special requirements for the paper recommendation. So the evaluation includes the active substance as well as impurities, reaction and degradation products. So I said we need a complete characterization of the substance, but also not only for the substance, but also for the impurities and yes, the degradation products. And in the plastics regulation, there is a convention that 6 square decimeters packaging comes into contact with 1 kilogram food. For paper and board, this might be different, and that's why when this convention is taken, this should be proven. An example here would be the baking paper that is used for pizza. So there might be not. So maybe the convention could not be used for this example. And we always want to have the worst case application for the exposure assessment. And when the grammage is concerned, then we assume paper with a grammage of 300 gram per square meter as worst case. For the determination of the transfer of substance from paper into food, or a tiered approach can be used. The first step should always be the theoretical calculation on the assumption of a complete transfer based off the quantity used in the process. But when you use the first step, then there might be a very high theoretical migration. And for this, you might need a lot of toxicological data that you probably not have. And then you have to go to the second step. You make a theoretical calculation on the assumption of a complete transfer based on the content in the paper. So not all the substance that you use in the production of the paper might end up in the paper. So this should then be a lower amount for the second step. But maybe you still have a high migration when you make this calculation. And then you do not have enough toxicological data. Then you have to go to the third step, and you should then make migration measurements in food simulants or in food itself. And for the migration measurement, we have some ideas what data we want that we want to see for recommendation 36 for to say normal food packaging. You can make a cold water extract to a European standard 645. And this simulates the transfer of a substance from the paper into water, and this is assumed that the same amount would be transferred into food. And depending on the substance and the intended use, an organic solvent could be the worst case. Then an organic solvent extract should be made. The applicant can also present a migration test according to the plastics regulation, or TENAX could also be used when the substance is volatile, and this way of migration is the worst case. For recommendation 36.1, this is, as I said, this is used for hot filter papers like coffee filters or tea bags. And here we want to have the hot water extract. So here you put your paper into water and wait for 2 hours at 80 degrees. So this is there the worst case. And if the substance is not soluble in water, but in an organic solvent, and then the organic solvent extract should be used to show the worst case. For recommendation 36.2, for the baking paper, the hot water extract should be used, or the organic solvent extract, or the migration into TENAX. At 2 hours at 220 degrees to simulate the baking process, or also the test dough according to a German standard could be used for 2 hours at 220 degrees. And we have in this recommendation a special section for paper that is only be used for microwave applications. Then the testing conditions can be shorter, for 30 minutes only at 150 degrees. And additionally, for recommendation 36.2 for the baking paper, the substance itself without paper matrix should be tested via thermogravimetric measurement for 2 hours at 220 degrees, and then additional 10 minutes for 250 degrees to simulate the baking process. And this should be done under atmospheric oxygen, and the substances that are released during this test should be quantified and identified. Then I would like to show an example where we changed the recommendation recently. And due to the plastics strategy of the European Commission, many plastic materials are substituted by paper and board. And here wet strength agents are used that you can use paper in contact with water, like drinking straws. And here these wet strength agents are produced using epichlorhydrin, and this is hydrolyzed into these two substances. And we have a footnote in the recommendation where we say that this DCP, this substance here, should not be detectable in the cold water extract for recommendation 36, and not be detectable in the hot water extract for recommendation 36.2. And we have a detection limit of these for DCP of 2 microgram per liter. This is quite low. And for the other substance, for MCPD, we do not want to have a migration into this water extract higher than 12 microgram per liter. Here, a short explanation: the cold water extract, there 10 grams of paper are put into at least 250 milliliter of water, and you wait for 24 hours at room temperature and then analyze the water extract. For the hot water extract, 2 hours at 80 degrees are used. We got some results from official control laboratories, and very surprising results. Here, for example, this cake paper 1, we had a migration into the cold water extract of 18.5 microgram per liter for MCPD, and into the hot water extract of 6.4. And this shows that the hot water extract shows lower results than the cold water extract, but we always want to have the worst case. And this was quite surprisingly for us. And then we made some kinetic experiments. And here the blue line is the migration of MCPD into the cold water extract for 24 hours. And the red line, you can see an exponential decrease in the hot water extract. And the results are taken here for the cold water extract after 24 hours. And here we are just in the middle of this exponential decrease for the hot water extract after 2 hours. So there seems to be some reaction that takes place with the substance at higher temperatures, and we do not see this reaction when we use room temperature. And as I said, we want always to have the worst case, and that is why we amended the preamble of the recommendation 36.2 for the baking paper, and said that the limit values for MCPD and DCP need to be determined in the cold water extract of paper products despite intended use. So you always have to use the cold water extract because we want to have the worst case. So that's all for me. Thank you for your attention, and yes, I'm ready for questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Merker. That's great presentation. Many of the information related to the food contact surfaces, papers, board, and yeah, that is a very important part of the food contact surfaces. Yeah, we have some more questions. See how much does it cost to including a substance in the BFR recommendation, and then also how long does this take to have a new substance listed on the BFR recommendation? Can you answer? Yeah.
Yeah. To answer your first question, yeah, I didn't mention that. So from the BFR, this is this work. The assessment is free of charge. But what you have to bring is the analytical and toxicological data. So this is yes, it depends on the data set, but this is quite expensive. But the work of the BFR is free of charge. And as I said, we have 2 meetings a year where we discuss And we have a deadline. This is maybe it's 5 months prior to the meetings. So this would then take at least half a year. But for most of the applications, we have some additional questions. So in the end, yes, maybe it takes at least 1 year, sometimes longer. This depends on our questions and on the answers that we get.
Yeah, this is a great answer. Yeah, our audience also say thank you and a great presentation. And yeah, one question is there are some of the paper and also coated or covered with wax, covered with alumni, you know, those kind of material. So if we do this the migration test, you will require for the test for the looking at the paper itself for the migration, or you also looking at just the wax. So what is your target for the substance?
So we would so first, when you use wax, then the paper should not be in contact with fatty food because the migration will be of the wax will be very high. But as the wax is not a complete barrier, we would also have a look at the paper. So we would have a look at both substances.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. This is very helpful because also in China, we have this national standard for food contact surfaces as well. So this is good. Yeah, thank you again, Stephen. And yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And now let's move to the 我们第三个演讲嘉宾。
Next, let's move to our third keynote speech. Ms. Yang Wenli with Yaco Drainage Technology Shanghai. And her presentation topic is how the drainage system affects the effective operation of the food factory. Next, I will give the floor to Mrs. Yang. You have the floor. Thank you. Distinguished guests, good afternoon. It's my pleasure to attend this afternoon session. And some of our guests join us from the online platform. So my topic today is how the drainage system affects the high efficiency operation of the food factory. So I would like to talk with several stories. I have a kid when he was 2 years old, and I brought her to my company. And when he saw the logo, and he started to know the letters, and I told him that this is ACO, Echo. So this is like enlightenment for his English learning. So when he turned 5 years old, I talked with him. Do you know what I'm working for? And do you know what is my job? And he answered that you work in the drainage system. And I asked him what it's about, and he said it's about the pipeline and drainage and the filter. And this is the key words. And you are very competitive and you're very knowledgeable. And the drainage system is often neglected by people. And I would like to play a video clip. Can you help me to turn the page? And please play the video.
My employees? Nah, they're good. It's my tools. They're fine. It must be the ingredients then. Nah, they're perfect. There must be something I'm missing.
所以说刚才这个呢，就是我们可能在食品加工的过程中，
So this what will happen during the food process, and when there's something problems occur, and we'll think about maybe it's caused by human or caused by equipment, but actually it is caused by the drainage system. And so I can't help but wondering, so drainage systems are always neglected by people. So this is a picture. So this picture was taken in a food factory. And you can see there are a lot of advanced equipment. But when you look carefully, so where is the drainage system? There are a lot of parts. And you can see that. And you can see that there's a plastic film covered by the drainage system. Then I opened the film. This is the floor drain. It is smelly, and it pollutes the air in the food factory. And you can see that there are a lot of there's a lot of food. And this is a real picture taken in the factories. This is another floor drain. So what the problem with the floor drain? Why they buried it with cement? And I found some references. On the left-hand side, so you can see the pipeline is connected with the floor drain. And on the right-hand side, you can see that there's a space. They disconnected. So in Europe, and they require that there be some disconnection between the floor drain and the pipeline. This is another picture taken by me. This is the floor drain in food factory. And when I help them to analyze the draining system, I found this really filthy. And the production environment is really bad. There are a lot of food residue. And the biological membrane was formed. And this is another picture. You can see there's a big crack. And there's even some insects.
来，再继续再看。那么这块儿也是我们经常会在，比方说后厨啊，一些食品。
And this is something that commonly seen. Commonly seen in the kitchen. And this is the drain system that we've seen a lot. And all the pictures are taken in the food factory. And a lot of pictures are quite horrifying. And please play the video for me.
Drainage matters. And here is the drainage. We are in the food processing environment, which is literally washed down into the drainage every time it is cleaned. No wonder that 70% of positive listeria screens are found in the drainage. It means that drainage may be the point of food contamination. Think about any traffic going over the drainage. Any standing water in the drainage or around it may be the threat to food. Speaking of threats, improper cleaning method combined with poor drainage design may end up in real disaster.
对，刚才这个视频中呢，大家可以看到，在我们食品加工的时候
And from the video, you can see that. And 70% of the Listeria bacteria was detected in the drain system. So this is the data from the pork processing factory. And for the Listeria bacteria, 37% of them are found in the drainage system. The next is on the floor. So I think this data starts to get quite worrying. We should be concerned with all the data. So how to improve the drainage system to maintain our high operation system, but at the same time to ensure the food safety? I think we can start with the following aspects. The first is the design of the drainage system. According to GB 14881, and we categorize the area down to the clean area and the polluted area. And for the pipeline should be designed to flow from the high risk area to the medium or low risk area. So you can see that the high risk area should be channeled independently, and so that it will not pollute other areas. And because there was some blockage in the draining system, so you have to make it through. And you need to put this vat outside of the high risk area. So this is the flow of the pipeline design. And the next one is the deployment of the drainage points. And we found that, and a lot of factories, they have already started to do the construction before the everything is well designed. So I think for all the constructors or the planners, so you need to deploy the drainage system very well. And we need to deploy the drainage system to where it needs. And the drain floor should be placed to the place that the water comes a lot. And you can also place the floor drain to a place that you can clean it easily. Sometimes because some equipment covers the drain floor, and so that the drain floor will get quite filthy.
然后再一个呢，第3点，刚才我们讲到了排水管道的流向。
And the third point, besides the flow of the pipeline and the deployments of the drainage system, come back to the ground system. We need to examine the operation of the pipeline to look at the peak volume of the drainage water. So if you neglect this point, the following scenario will happen. Please help me to play the video on the left-hand side.
So from this video, from a food factory, and they met some problems on the drainage system, asked us to help them to improve it. So this is a really extinct example that they never consider the drain lines of the drainage system, and which lead to the flood. So whether it is a good drainage system, we have to consider the CIP. So here we have to match the volume with the drain volume. So next, let's talk about floor drain. So floor drain is related to the entrance, and we have to design it from the clean perspective. So firstly, we're going to use the steel, stainless steel. And on the right side, I listed just several points of the clean design. So the first is we have to fill in the border, the edge. So in this way, we can just avoid the cracked ground. And all the turning point should be rounded. We cannot just put it in the 90-degree. Third part is the welding. So the welding is not just the very traditional point welding. So we have to meet the demand of the clean drain. Last one is about the peak of the drain. So at least the 5 millimeter as the head, and we can take it separately. The last part is the drainability. So we take the floor drain out. We cannot just leave any pollutant water here. So on the right-hand side, we can just take it separately to clean it, and then just put it back. So in this way, it cannot just contain many pollutants. It's very clean. So if a very clean product, if we put it here, what's the difference between the clean products and unclean products? Why we just design so many details? So does it help our outcomes? So we did a research in a laboratory in Germany. So what kind of products we can use, we can adopt? And does it help our food safety? They did a laboratory. So next, let's watch the comparison in the lab.
是一个洁净设计的一个地漏。
So this is the floor drain.
右边是一个普通的。
So right hand side is a traditional drain floor. The clean drain floor and unclean drain floor. We're gonna compare the two kind of products. We use clean water to wash it, to wash all the pollutants. We cannot see any spots here. So we just put all the data into our computer to complete the comparison. So this is the process of washing. And the left side is the hygienic design. The right hand side is the non-hygienic design. So we still have the 2% residue. We cannot wash it completely. So hereby maybe we can now use our eyes to identify it, but it is the actual residues. So from the high risk process of our food production, we should attach great importance to it. So after the drain floor, okay, let's see the cover board. Sometimes the drainage system can be neglected because we cannot see it. So the only thing which can be shown is the cover board. So what kind of consideration we have to take? First is the water flux. Second is the weight, the bearing weight. If you can just stand the weight of the people or the vehicles. For example, we can see the first picture shown in the slide. Because of the very big weight of the vehicles, and it has been cracked. And we also need to consider the bearing level. Because of the heavy vehicle, it may lead to the crackation of our cover board. We also need to consider the non-skid property. So will lead to the employee's danger. So we have to consider the non-skid property. Last, the hygiene demands. Because actually the cover board is the first entrance of the slopes. So it is closely connected with the hygiene in our factory. So the top picture, it cannot achieve our demands. But bottom, when we design it, it is the seamless. So you cannot just leave any space here. So after the drainage line, drainage system, the drain floor, the cover board, we also need to consider another thing. It is not a kind of product, but is correlated with it. We call it ground design. For example, we're gonna replace the non-hygienic products. We have them to enlarge the system to make it flow successfully. And I've been to a factory before. One of the employees joked with me, the highest place is where we just locate our drain floor. But in this way, we have to consider the grade, the slope in the system. So after the drainage systems design, what is our consideration for designing it, and how to improve the drainage system? The first one, it is smelly. So we hope we can use some special design to isolate the smell. And we have to put it completely sealed. For example, the milk powder design or the diary doors design. We also need to put it sealed completely. Then we will wash it, we open it. And we also can drain the water and cover the board again, so which can ensure the quality of the air. Next picture is very hard to clean, and we hope we can just improve it in this way. And this floor drain, we're gonna use a straw to wash it. But outer side is not very easy to clean completely. So there are some residues as well because of the structure and the layout of the drain floor. So if we want to transfer it from a non-hygienic to the hygienic drain floor, we put the cover board outside, it is empty downside. Next picture. When the drain volume is not very designed well, it will lead to some hazards because the drainage system always being neglected by us. So it may lead to a lot of concerns to us. Sometimes it cannot work successfully, or it is smelly. So in this way, if we design it very well, we can put it and make it work smoothly and successfully. So we analyze these cases from the drain line perspective. So now let's talk about our ideal cases. This is the seamless drain system. So first, it's very easy to find a slope on the ground, because from the traditional drainage system, you have to find the slopes individually. But in this case, it's very easy to find a slope, and it is designed beautifully. So when the water flows to the drain floor, it can be concentrated easily. Second part is the big volume. So if the volume is very huge, we're going to use this one. And we're going to leave a space between the drain pipe with the drain floor. So after that, I'm going to show you a video clip. And this clip can show us the importance of maintenance of the drain floor and how to clean it on our daily work. Now, I'd like to play the video clip. This is a filter.
This is a maintenance of the drainage system. And after cleaning, you can put all the parts back in. So I would like to introduce our company, and we are a family company from Germany. Was established in 1946. We have over 30 production bases over 15 countries. And this is ICO China introduction. In 2005, our Wolfie company was established in China, and we mainly produce a drainage system, including the cement drainage system, many used in such as Universal Studio and the airports and Disneyland in Shanghai. And we are dedicated to do that. And also we can split the oil and the fat. And we can filter the oil and then to generate or say to discharge the water into the draining system. And we can also accumulate the rainwater from summer, and we can accumulate the rainwater and process the water. And when the winter or in the dry period of time, we can discharge the water and back into the system. And we have worked in this system for over 30 years. And we're dedicated to help design the drainage system in food safety and food factory. We have collaborated with a lot of food factory to help them to improve or upgrade the system. And I would like to wrap up with my children's story. And he's in the second grade in primary school. And I asked him, so a building is like a person. And what do you think about the drainage system? And my son thought about it, and he said maybe it's a discharging system. And maybe it's the bowl system or systemic system of a person. Because we eat food, we digest, and then we discharge the food from our body. And on the right hand side is the QR code of our floor drain system. On the left hand side is our public account of ICO. There are a lot of knowledges and some workshops. And I have brought some samples on outside this conference hall. Please do visit our booth. So this is my presentation. Thank you for your time. Thank you, Mrs. Yang. Thank you for your introduction. The drainage system is very important, but it always neglected by people. So probably start from now. Please turn more attention or focus on the drainage system. And to choose the high quality drainage system. And I have a question to Mrs. Yang. In your product design, can you tell us what do you prioritize? Thank you for your question. And in our design, we'll first think about the volume of the water. And the second is the quality of the pipeline, the diameter of the pipeline. And then we'll consider the water processing volume of the floor drain. And we need to take the floor drain into consideration with the pipeline as well. And then I will think about the pressure, because the pressure is very important to prevent the explosion, or to prevent the leakage of the water. And the next point is the rubbish filter, and I will think about the volume of the filter bucket, and with their covering boards. And we need to think about whether the board is anti-slippery and whether it's a solid. For the sake of time, we will not be able to take more questions, and we're going to take a 10 minutes break. And we'll start at resume at 4 o'clock. Thank you.
Hello. Hi, Emmanuel.
Hello.
Hello. Yes, thank you for coming on time. And we're going to take a 10 minutes break. We'll come back at 4 o'clock.
Okay.
Hope that's okay with you.
Yeah, it's perfect. Just I have a question on the presentation. Yes. You can see both slides or one slide?
I see 2 slides.
Okay, wait. Now one slide.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Okay, then we see each other in about less than 10 minutes.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sure. 好，大家好，请大家回来，我们继续开始我们下半段的分享。好，那么我们
Welcome back. So next, let's go forward to our next speaker, Emmanuel, who is the General Secretary of the FEMIN. And she has worked there for almost 10 years, since 2009, and helps some foundation of the standards, and also the crisis PR. Today, she would like to talk about the importance of food safety for safe food.
好，那我们有请
Next, let's hand the floor to Emmanuel.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I don't know if you can hear me clear.
Yes.
It's okay? Yeah, perfect. So thank you very much for the introduction, and thank you for the opportunity that it was given to me to make this presentation. With my presentation, actually, I would like to address a topic that sometimes tend to be ignored when we are talking about food safety. And this has to do with the feed safety and the challenge that our sector face in the direction of managing potential risks and hazards. And at the end, how the two distinguished sectors, feed and food, can work together with a view to provide safe, healthy, and affordable food to the consumer. Moving forward, just a short overview of the challenges that we have as a feed industry. And I think everyone is aware about the FAO forecast that by 2050, we need to fed more than 9 billion people in the world. So that's already a big challenge. Take into consideration that in our Earth, we have limited resources ahead. Now, the good news is that the feed industry is in a position at this moment to cope with this challenge. And what we have seen over the last years is a significant increase of the production of feed in the whole main regions of the world: Europe, Brazil, US, China. So there is a demand for additional feed or animal food to serve the needs of the food-producing animals. Animal origin products like meat, eggs, and other foods, they require balanced feeds. And through these balanced feeds, what we can achieve is, first of all, to ensure food safety, to reduce production costs, to enhance food quality and consistency, and also to reduce potential pollution and to contribute further to sustainability by reducing animal waste. Now, what is very important is that we try to understand the difference between what is a feed safety and what is a food safety. And for this, we are going to use the two definitions. That one definition for feed safety can be found on FAO, and the other one, of course, from the Codex. So when we are talking about feed safety, we are talking about that I ensure that the feed, the animal food that will be consumed by the animals, will not cause or will not affect the health of the animals or the food of animal origin. While when we are at the side of the food safety, is to ensure that the food that we'll consume will not affect the humans. So when we are talking about feed safety, we are talking about the safety, the animal health, how we can ensure that as a feed sector, we are going to deliver a healthy animal or a healthy animal product to the food sector. And by feed, of course, we mean any single or multiple ingredients that they fed directly to the animal. So we have to focus on the fact that talking about feed safety, priority is given to the animal health and not to have residues on any of animal origin products. Now, why feed safety is important? And as you can see here, well, that's a very simple diagram of the chain, of the food production chain. And we have two main concepts that we have to consider. The more traditional concept that's come from farm to fork and actually emphasize the responsibility of all parties in the production chain. Everyone should take effective measures to minimize the risks to animal and human health. So this is the first approach where we consider two dimensions, animal health and human health, in one approach. The second one is coming also from the more recent approach, the One Health approach. And in One Health approach, it recognized the relationship among three dimensions: human, animal, and environment. And we have to find ways how we can approach this together and not as an individual actions for each one of the three dimensions. So we have from farm to fork and also from One Health approach. So these are the two dimensions that we consider that as a production chain, feed safety and food safety, they are linked, they are very close linked together. The main challenges that we face within the feed sector and should not be underestimated is the fact that we go through a very tough period. And I'm not talking only about the COVID-19 situation. COVID-19 situation, I would say that maybe put aside for the moment and shift attention on the current virus. That when you have a virus, unfortunately, they came to stay. So we have bird flu, we have African swine fever, we have type A influenza. So all these viruses, they are still part of the feed chain, and they still can affect the animal health and any animal origin product. Another important topic is that we have a certain type of issues or hazards, like, for example, BCE, Salmonella, Listeria, where in this approach, to treat those diseases, you need to make use of antibiotics. And antibiotics today, it's a very hot topic, to link it also with the topic of our breakout session, for feed and food industry. And there's a number of actions taken nowadays to reduce the antimicrobial resistance in animals. So if we bring together the two aspects, the animal feed is actually playing a vital role to ensure that we could have an antimicrobial resistance reduced, and also to ensure the animal health and the production of safe and quality products. A number of actions are taken already at the level of FAO in order to raise further awareness about the use of antibiotics, but also to ensure more straightforward implementation of One Health policy. For your information, I attach also a recent report by the European Food Safety Authority that actually for the first time in history, we observe less presence of antibiotics in animals and more in humans. So in this conclusion, a first conclusion is that a proper animal feed contributes further to the reduce of the use of antibiotics in food producing animals. What could be now the cause of feed contamination? First of all, lack of knowledge. In addition to that, we have a lack of effective control systems, sometimes the use of inadequate ingredients, and especially now with COVID-19 situation where supply chain became confronted with a significant amount of challenges. We have issues of fraud, human failure, and I put as a last point, lack of food safety culture, and probably inspired from the food safety culture, but quite often we have the challenge to explain to the production people why food safety matters. And when you get the response that, but why we care so much, because a cow can eat from the ground and the ground is not clean, why the ingredients that they go to animal feed should be hygiene. So that's always a challenge that we have to face during the explanation of why feed safety is important. The source of feed contamination that could be defined in 4 different categories, and that come from natural occurrence like mycotoxins, water, soil, and air pollution. We have feed contamination coming from processing aids. So, for example, plant protection agents that we have meet quite often pesticides residues in animal feed. Could be also from pest control agents or technological agents. We should not, of course, ignore chemical and biological like dioxins, heavy metals, salmonella, and you have feed contamination that could come through cross-contamination, like during the process or during the transportation or storage. Another important element that could define how we treat risks is the regulatory classification of an ingredient. And I brought here 2 examples, one from Europe and one from China, where the same ingredient has a different regulatory classification. And the regulatory classification, whether the ingredient is considered as a feed material or a feed additive, might trigger different risk management that is derived from the regulatory environment of each region. And here is the challenge. So if you have the same ingredient with different regulatory interpretation, which feed safety risk I should consider? Coming now to how we manage those risks and what is the feed safety concept. And within the feed sector, we tend to consider the principles of good manufacturing practices mainly. However, this is not enough. We have a powerful tool, and this is called HACCP, which in combination with the GMPs could support further the minimize risks coming into the food producing animals. And HACCP plan is quite popular for the food sector. In the feed sector, there are limited regions that they have a regulatory requirement for HACCP. However, as an industry-driven standard, we consider that HACCP is mandatory also for the feed sector. Another aspect that is also challenging for the feed sector is feed fraud. And this should not be underestimated. As Elke in her presentation mentioned, feed fraud is an intentional act, and aspects of feed safety or they are not considered through the feed fraud. And the reason is that the organizations that they involved on those activities, they might not be aware about the impact of their actions. So they are focused on financial gain and not necessarily to harm the public or the animals. In this under-feed fraud, also we have to consider and defense issues. So issues that could harm more broadly the public or create a financial disaster in a particular economy. So for example, if you administrative a poison through the feed and then you kill the animals in a certain region, in a certain farms, and those farms are source of income for a particular region, then definitely we are considered about terrorists and an act of terror. Another important element is that our systems are not built to prevent fraud. They are built to manage known risks. They are not built to manage unknown. And that's always a challenge when we are coming to deal and manage fraud and defense issues. For that reason, within the fraud, we have to consider three main aspects, and this has to do with the opportunity. I mean, how easy it is to fraud the product, the motivation, and the controls. If I fraud the product, I will get caught? That's always the big question. All these three factors, if you bring together, they define a vulnerability, our exposures, how vulnerable we are. And I would like to bring an example with regards to choline chloride, I mean, or otherwise more commercially, vitamin B4. So choline chloride is a feed additive and is mainly used in poultry. And what is the main, I would say, methodology, how the industry tackled this issue is mainly to test about the chloride content. However, we have noticed that actually choline chloride can be subject to fraud due to addition, for example, of sodium chloride. So there is now the issue how we can detect the fraud. Well, it could be by simple testing, weight, volume, or dilution with water. Analyze directly the choline. And here is the key point, that the fraudsters know that we all going to test for choline in order to define the total amount of the ingredient. And of course, near infrared spectrography. Now, if we bring this into the formula, what is the opportunity? The dilution is very easy. The adulteration is actually very easy to perform. What is the motivation? Is that choline chloride price is considered as a premium ingredient, and sometimes we have significant discrepancy in the supply chain. And what are the lack of the control? So we have visual or very common testing with QC that do not fit for detecting fraud. And most of the cases also when it comes to quality, we tend to rely on the documentation submitted by the supplier. But this documentation is not helpful enough to provide us and to determine the level of fraud, to determine the fraud or to prevent. At the end, and this is my last slide, I consider that given the challenges that we have to face over the upcoming years, and mainly considering the sustainability and circular economy that now is introduced to our operational environment, there is a very close relationship between the two sectors. And one of the points that we have to consider and is that the feed sector is not the waste deposit of the food sector. the byproducts coming from the food sector, in order to be able to reutilize, they should go through a very specific process, and we have to make sure that they are fulfill the necessary hygiene conditions in order to be able to transform to feed. So in the circular economy environment, feed and food sector, they have an important role to play. And in this concept, I think we have to find a way that how we can work together in order to define possible future vulnerabilities that may come from food waste that will incorporate also into feed. So that's my short presentation, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Emmanuel. It's very great, thorough. Very thorough presentation. Give us really a good of the understanding of feed safety linked to food safety. People normally don't think.
I cannot hear you.
Can you? Can you hear me now? Or?
It sounds a bit far.
Oh, it's far, is it? Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Better?
Yes, much more better.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, thank you for this presentation. It's great to give us the understanding of feed safety and link to the food safety. They are really linked to each other. Normally we don't have that kind of a strong connection, but thank you. Yeah. So you just think about the global regulation, and for some of the ingredients, so why we need to really have a good understanding for the feed, some of the ingredients with the global of the regulations. Can you give a little bit? Yeah.
Indeed, that's very interesting point, because what we have seen over the past years is that the trade of ingredients is global, and take this into consideration. Nowadays, more and more regulatory areas worldwide, Europe, China, US, India, they develop their own feed legislation. And in this feed legislation, they classify the ingredients with a particular methodology. In this classification, the classification most of the times is associated also with the risk that you have to manage. So if I bring the experience from regulations at the European level, we have a directive for the undesirable substances. The directive defines the levels of substances that we don't want to see in feed. However, this is based on the fact how the substance is classified. Is classified as a feed additive or is classified as a feed material. If the substance is classified as a feed additive because feed additives are used in a very small quantities and they go on through further processing, we have different limits. Either if by from the one that if the substance is classified as a feed material. So at the end, if the product is as a feed material, you have to deal with more risks and more strict limits. And if it's a feed additive, you may not have any risk to work to manage. And this regulatory classification is important because at the end, you have the official controls. So having a product change regulatory classification, the product remains the same, but changing regulatory classification from region to region makes the management of those risks and or hazards a little bit more complicated.
Okay, thank you. We also have a question from the audience. Said, do you have any idea about the feed safety or the feed carryover, the swine flu.
I cannot hear.
You cannot hear me? Okay. Let me repeat. So you mentioned about the feed safety linked to food safety, say some of the animal zoonotic disease, like swine flu. That happened in China back to 2018, and European country, Africa also happened with this like Africa swine flu. Is there any feed related to that? And what do you do with the feed regarding the Africa swine flu?
I could hear part of the question. I will try to see if I got it right. So African swine fever, it's still a hot topic. And we had the hope that with COVID, due to the fact that the movements will be reduced, that somehow it will be better controlled. However, this is not really the case. Now, there are a lot of discussions whether feed is responsible for the transmission of African swine fever. At this moment, we don't have any study to confirm that feed is responsible for the transmission of African swine fever. However, what we have to consider, and it's very important, is once a virus is entered in a chain, it's unavoidable. So what we try to do is to minimize the risks that the virus will enter into our production sites or into the farm by introducing biosecurity measures. So we don't have evidence that African swine fever is transported through feed. I would say that in some feed ingredients, there is no virus that can survive, given the composition. So at this moment, however, we have to consider the supply chain, we have to consider the biosecurity plans of the farm in order to prevent African swine fever enter into our sites.
Thank you. Again, this is a great the presentation and the interaction. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, 我们下一个演讲嘉宾是深圳市标准技术研究院。
Next, I will give floor to Director Zhou Peng with Shenzhen Standard Technology Research Institute. And his topic is exploration and practice of a standard compliance evaluation in food industry. Distinguished guest, ladies and gentlemen, can you hear my voice? I would like to thank the organizer for inviting me and to exchange my topic with you. And this year marks the 40 years anniversary of Shenzhen Economic Zone. And I would like to play a documentary video. And there's a sentence mentioned in the documentary. And there is a glossary called 正品, which means the product produced in Shenzhen. And 正品 is a logo for the city. And last year, in the same conference, I have introduced our exploration of the regulatory compliance. And I have some, we have developed in-depth understanding of this field.
So we have achieved some progress. Last year, in my sharing, and I said that we just have some limitation of the Shenzhen standards mode. So hereby, I'm going to recall some of the work of the government and also look forward to the future. First part is main approaches. Shenzhen is a very important window of China's reform and opening up. So actually, the total coverage is almost 20 million square meters. And 90% the agriculture, goods, and food come from the outside. So it's not just a city or a treaty port of China, but also a very important part of the food production and also connected with the other city of the country. So many business, even including some small scale companies, will have to face the controversy. So we have to realize the importance. So how to just select the standards to meet the demands of the food safety and how to give the full play role of it. We had many practices, especially the role of the standardization. And we have some positioning of the Jinping. The working plan includes 13 major projects and 60 sub-projects. So we cooperated almost all the companies related to the agriculture goods and the key businesses to establish the Zhenping Promotion Council. And we clarified the 9 key works. We call it 1 + 3 + 9. So the one set of operating mechanism is the one. Just each authority plays its own role. And guided by the government initially, but we can to do the promotion and the marketing in the future. So very glad to see that. So with the recognition of the work, the BSI, SGS, or other renowned international organizations have already got involved in our work. So our working committee's members not only include the members from the government, as well as some of the CPC members. So they're responsible for the whole implementation of the work. So our working committee is responsible for the overall planning and control. And they're responsible for the evaluation, the risk assessment, and overall planning, and etc. So actually, the one set of operating mechanism is established. So from the enterprise application, evaluation, until the launch release, just 20% can be done successfully. So if we calculate all the products, the successful rate is less than 50%. So from this data, we can see that the strictness of our inspection. And we have our own evaluation system and supervision and inspection systems. The different systems can be related closely to each other. these three major pillar systems, which is also a very important part of the 1+3+9 working systems. So hereby, I'd like to share our standardization data. So we established food safety technology standards 3 years ago, and this data can cover more than 36 international organizations in the regions. And more than just 140,000 guidelines were included. And we're also open to the public, so welcome to visit our website. So this data can increase the efficiency of our work. And this evaluation system considers the document system. We also just control the risk and from the base environment, production quality, and traceability. So in terms of the supervision system, we also establish our own internal supervision system. We attach great importance to the risk analysis and exchange of the risk assessment. For example, when the food safety risks happened outside, can influence our policy and principles. Our evaluation system will respond quickly to the analysis work and evaluation work as soon as possible. So the 9 basic principles are very obvious. We can say it is use the standardization as the basis, and which is very open and transparent. And we're going to use the control as our precise and use the information as the platform and use the quality promotion as our guidelines. So next, I'd like to talk about our main achievements. So we promoted our brand, our market, dozens of times. We invited members from the Central Committee and some the food safety organizations to join us. And gradually, we received the recognition of the market. So firstly, we get a recognition from the regulation party. And then the market recognized us as well. So from this data, we realized that since 2018 until now, so actually our Zhenpin covered more provinces, from the 8 provinces to the 23 provinces. And we established the 360 standards. And by 2018, we just have several members. But currently, the members increased to the 700. So food is the milestone of our people. So it's the promotion of the agriculture. And we also just combine the combination of the supermarket, malls, and farmers market. And some promotions or the exhibitions joined us as well. And we have a very good interaction. So in this way, we already became a member of the Guangdong, Hong Kong, Macau, Greater Bay Area Standard Evaluation Alliance. So the current mission of Zhenpin is the agriculture goods. We are very glad to see that the working system can guide the development of the poor areas. We can help them to support some poor counties. It also can combine with the poverty alleviation and rural revitalization. So not only benefit our agriculture areas as well as the Shenzhen or the Macau Bay areas development. Thirdly, let's see the top theory. So when we record the recognition or the evaluation, it's not a brand new standards. We talk about the system of ICO. We also need to consider the organic product certification and good agricultural practices. And this is also a useful way to stimulate the development of our enterprises. And we have some standardized good behaviors, like Zhejiang or Inner Mongolia. They are really the good pilots. So we attach great importance to several aspects. The first is based on the scientific analysis, includes the industry research comparison and the result transmission. And also based on the scientific analysis, joint multi-party development of technical standards. And we build on the fundamental industry growth elements, as well as improve the results of the development. And standard system mindset, especially emphasizing the standard life cycle management. Firstly, we also established the connection with the industry to promote the development of the industries. We build an ecological connection of industrial collaboration and steady promote industrial development. And we summarize a set of ecological chain with standard plus brand plus industry and other related parties. Fifth, strengthen the brand delivery, operation, and maintenance promotion. Increase the awareness and the reputation of Zhenping through some cross-regional cooperation, promotion, and market docking. So last but not least, is our outlook for the future. We're looking forward to the future. We hope that on the basis of our previous work, we can consolidate the research and improve our own management system, the risk prevention and control capability, and analyzes and compare with the BSI and other institutions. We also can cooperate with some technological organizations and to improve the technology promotion ability of the standard system. We also need to pay attention to the market feedback and to get the new trend of our market to improve the development of supply chain, as well as the wider recognition. And we also need to give the full play to the advantages of the dual zone construction to have development of a food standard system in the Greater Bay Area. Currently, our team is leading the development of food standards in the Greater Bay Area and to provide some new ideas to the food safety in the Greater Bay Area. Thank you for your listening. Okay, thank you for the speech. Very fruitful. So Zhenping is a very good mode which can solve the agriculture goods in Shenzhen, especially for the quality and the safety, as well as benefit the residents in Shenzhen, and especially promote development of their well-being. I was encouraged as well. So in your speech, I had some questions I'd like to share with you. First is for 正品. So what is the distribution channel? How does the product distributed into the downstreams? And you have established a standard. So do you learn from the GFSI standards? Thank you. For your first question, how the product distributed. And Zhengping is in an open market, and Shenzhen is open market. Any product is complied with Chinese standards. The products can be sold in Shenzhen market. And the product with Zhengping logo. And they have great capability to be liquidated, to be distributed. For example, for some canteens in Shenzhen universities, and they tend to choose the products with a Zhengping logo. And for some supermarkets, they also tend to choose Zhengping product. For example, there's a company that produces Zhengping product. And in the past, they communicated with some of the supermarket in Shenzhen, and it was not easy for them to get into the supermarket. But when they get the Zhengping logo, it is quite easy for them to get into the supermarkets, and the sales was quite good. And the Zhengping products are welcomed by the different merchandise. And the second is the Zhengping products takes a better market share. This is why a lot of companies are applying for Zhengping logo. And the second is the standards formulation. So the formulation of a Zhengping is compliant with the Chinese standards. And we take the Guili from Hong Kong as a benchmark. You just mentioned standards. All of these are our references. And another phenomenon is we're thrilled to find that this system has transited from a food security to a comprehensive standards, including analysis, assessment, etc. Did I answer your question? Thank you for your answer. And I believe that Zhengping will become a very good model for the other cities. And it will provide great support for the supply of food and vegetables. Thank you for your sharing. Can I raise another question? Yes, of course, we can take another question. And I will ask the standards about the food safety or about quality. Because you mentioned that it's compliant with Chinese regulation, and take the Guili in Hong Kong as the benchmark. So I would like to ask, Zhengping product is higher quality than the peers. So what are the differences between GFSI products? What are the main differences? So what are the difference between Chinese standards, and what the differences with Guili?
This is my first question. And the second question is, will this program be promoted to the other cities? So it is possible for the other city to establish their own standards. So will that facilitate the internal circulation? This is my second question. I was about to leave, so I come back to the platform. Can you hear my voice? I didn't fully capture your question. I will try to answer. Okay. The first question, you ask about the details about our regulation, and the second is, will Zhengpi be promoted to other cities? And if the other cities learn from Shenzhen, and will that cause any conflicts? Am I right? So I would like to clarify my first question. I would like to ask the differences or the differentiation between the national standard or GFSS standard or Hong Kong standard. And the central government state that we need to enhance the double circulation. Is it okay and is it possible for the other city to learn from Shenzhen? It is aligned with the central government's standards. For your first question, we start from the product regulation and the product standards. And the product standard is group standards. It's not our local standard. It's not national standard. It's a product standard. This is the first answer. And our philosophy is, and based on the national standard, and we take a Hong Kong standard as a benchmark, and based on the big data, we analyze the data, and we have formed a product standards. And why we promote the Zhengpin product? Because it's aligned with Shenzhen city. You may know that Hong Kong, the people favorite the product from Hong Kong. They think that the product in Hong Kong is safer. And some of them may even buy some food sources from Hong Kong. So we compare the food standards between mainland China and Hong Kong. And there is some inconsistency between the two areas. And we have reached consensus with our Chinese member. So we want to make a higher requirements for the product. In the standard design, and we take a reference from Hong Kong, and we also make a reference from Britain, with Britain. And I think we have done some exploration. And the second is about the promotion. This is a group standard and it's voluntary. Based on the voluntary base, and this will not bring any discrimination or the market barrier to the other products. And people are highly appraised Shenzhen's standard and practice. And we have communicated with Inner Mongolia, and they have launched the product with some Hmong character. And they also started the logo from the product quality. I think it is worthy promotion. This is my answer to your question. Thank you. Thank you for your question and answer. I have a final question. Because for the food safety, there's a national standard or local standard. And for some local authentic food, there is some local standards. And so I recommend Shenzhen to do some more research on the fundamental things. This is a good exploration. But sometimes the local standards we need to take consideration as well. We need to align it with the food security regulation and standards. So this is my comments. Thank you. Yeah, maybe you can invite Mr. Gu come to Shenzhen and to exchange with you. Thank you. Thank you. Next, I will give the floor to Mrs. Stephanie Gamat to deliver the next presentation. And her topic is how the pandemic has made all the system evolve.
It's okay. So, hello everyone. I am happy to be with you. Do you see my screen well?
Yes.
It's okay. It's okay. Okay. So I will tell you about how the pandemic has made food safety system evolve. And that is one of my favorite topics, the audit system. First of all, let's start with the audit and what is really the purpose of food safety audit in our world. Food safety audit is a verification activity which is very important for the management of food safety in our company. First, because food safety audit is a way to check the performance of our internal standards. It's very important for a company to make sure the standards which are important are clearly in place. Verification activity means also that it's a way to monitor the food safety performance within the company and to make sure everything is well aligned. It is also a way for driving excellence because doing audit is a way for continuous improvement to reach the excellence level in food safety. And also because ensure the food safety management is well implemented is very important. And audit is a way to make sure that the system is robust and efficient at each step of the value chain. So that is the purpose of the food safety audit. Saying that, the question is, how was the audit performed traditionally? And in the, I would say, in the past now, we had some auditors who were traveling around the world in all our factories to inspect the factory and to meet the people and to see how the process was on the shop floor, how the food safety management system was on the shop floor. And the auditors were clearly with operators, with maintenance people, with operation guys on the shop floor. And that was the way of auditing, making a lot of interview with all of these persons within the factory to make sure the process were well in place, but also to evaluate the food safety culture on the shop floor, which is very important. And these audits were done with traditionally pens and paper and with many interactions, many interviews during the audit. And that was the audits were performed up to now. And suddenly, in 2021, COVID did happen. And then everything was different from before. So we had to change. What has changed? COVID has not created the ICT. COVID was just an accelerator because from one day to another, we had to change drastically our way of auditing, of visiting the factory. So what does it mean? That means that we had from beyond the shop floor, giving interview with operator, manager, leader of the factory with our pen and paper, we had to change. And progressively, people were replaced, I would say, by virtual glasses. We had some digital tablets for the audit. We had some video, and we have some data analysis with all the cloud and so on. And what is important is that it is not that all these ICT was created in 2020, no, for sure. It was for a long time. But traditionally, audits were, even if these ICT were already existing, audits were still with interview on the shop floor. And what did happen is that these ICT were existing was just put on the light and were used by the auditor because it was the only way to go and to visit the factory. And that was important. So that's why it was I would say an obligation for the auditor to use these ICT to make sure we can still verify that our food safety management system on the shop floor are well in place. And what is important is that, as we said, audit process is several steps which are very important. And these ICT did enable the audit system were still, I would say, alive during this period at each step of the audit process. First, during the preparation. Preparation is very important during an audit. And in fact, this period was very good for facilitating the preparation for both parts, auditee and auditors. And it was one of the learning of this step. Why? Because to prepare an audit, the auditor had perhaps virtual to know the factory upfront and facilitate the preparation and the process understanding. Because when an auditor factory perfect, he can remember to prepare the audit. But when it was not the case, when an auditor was never in the factory, he has to prepare perfectly. And to prepare well, then the virtual glasses was a way to visit the factory virtually before the audit and to better prepare the audit, the questions, the interview. It was also during the preparation from the factory point of view to upload all the documentation. And the feedback we receive is that uploading all the documentation force the auditees to read again, to correct, to improve, to refresh all the documentation system and to make the system evolve, the food safety management system evolve. So doing remotely and using ICT did force auditees and auditors to prepare better the audit. Then we had the audit by itself. The audit by itself was done remotely thanks to the high-speed connectivity, and it was thanks to that that we were able to connect between auditors and auditee and to have the efficient interview. We could also, thanks to virtual classes, to observe the practices and the behavior, to do tests, open the door, to a test on an X-ray, as an example. And it was really important because we were able to real time to share the information and to interact. So what was important? And it was done thanks to this ICT. Also for the report. For the report with all these ICT, the report was done with more efficiency, enable more direct capture of image because everything was already on the cloud. So it was good to have this report done on this way, and that facilitated. And also for the dashboard and the management review, because all the program and all the data in the cloud was facilitating the consolidation, extraction, and the timing for the audit. What was the true benefits of this ICT? First, of course, that was obvious for everyone, was the direct audit cost, travel, accommodation, but also the indirect cost with the travel time. Nevertheless, even time for auditor was, I would say, a gain of time, travel time, time for consolidation and so on, but also preparing the audit in a remote way was very, I would say, very important and very efficient, but also it took more time for auditor. And that was one of the learning. It took more time for preparing the audit than an on-site audit. But it was at the end, indeed, with travel time saving. Also, from factory's point of view, it was time because a balance with day-to-day activity, because with remote audits, I had to prepare a lot of things at factory level, but they could choose and balance with the emergency of the shop floor, so they can choose when they want to prepare the audit and so on. So it was also a better management of the time from both auditee and auditors. Also, it was a way to save the tiredness of auditors, also with security risk. We can also, it was said, but it was a bit challenge of auditors because less travel, which can make it better for auditors, but on the other hand, the auditors were all the days in front of a videos to observe with cameras, glasses, and so on, the factory. And even if they didn't travel in front of a computer, the well-being could be also challenged. Auditors like to be on the shop floor, so that was also something which, from an auditor to another, the well-being can be challenged as a key benefit. But less travel is nevertheless a good advantage. Of course, with less flight, it was a good environmental impact for the planet, and with less flight. So all of that, indeed, we said, oh, remote audit is really a key asset. But also, what we can see is that it was, as I said, also a a better deep in documentation review. In fact, you know, when you are on the shop floor and you audit, you are really focuses on the process of the cleanness, on how people are, the behavior of the people on the shop floor, and you are focused on that, and less focus on the document review. With remote audit, as people was less on the shop floor and so on, the auditor was more deep in the document system, in the document review. And that was the auditor give me as findings that it was a good way to enter in the part of the system, of the food safety management system of some factory, and to discover which have been, and that was a way to improve. And also from a factory's point of view, they also acknowledge that going so deep remotely in the documentation system was also a good advantage. So that was really for going on a topic which was less deeply explored before. But of course, it could be some problematic, and still we had many connection issues depending on the countries and also inside the factory. Inside the factory with virtual glasses, very often we have cuts of the connection. It was difficult to see with the steam, for example. It was difficult also to hear everything. So still, it's not, I would say, the ideal way of thinking. Also, remotely increase the language issue and limit the interaction with human. So auditor perception is very important during an audit, because all senses are in action. For instance, smell when you are an audit, and if something, a bad smell could be a signal of something on food safety point of view. But also it's very important is the perception of the auditor with the food safety culture. When you are on the shop floor and you speak, even if it's not the same language, if you speak with an operator who is explaining how we manage the CCP, how we manage such way of managing the process, you can feel how many the food culture is there. And with Visio, it was difficult to do that. So it was less difficult for the auditor to have this perception for all the sense. Of course, as I said, it's limited exploration, and not and be limited on this exploration can also have as consequences that some food safety risks were not observed during this period, and that could be a risk at company level. And then it's also the report. A report has to be properly written, because audit is not only ticking box and make sure standards are well applied. It's also a way for supporting for behind to auditees to explain why you are not compliant on this topic. It's very important for the food safety culture, for the food safety management system of a company, that the person are well understanding the standard, are well understanding why they are not compliant. So that's why all this explanation, all the time of exchanges with operators, with leadership team, with the management are very important. And also, this period with all these exchanges of data was a potential loss of data control, because documents were exchanged through the cloud. That was also a risk for the company for losing some data. So seeing all of that, what can we see? We can say that the ICT brings, for sure, very good opportunities for auditing activities. That is for sure. And this was really highlighted and proved during the pandemic. hopefully we add all this ICT during the pandemic to maintain the links with the factory, to maintain the verification activity. Because if not, during 2 years, we could have been without no links with our manufacturing site. So, and as I said previously, COVID did not create ICT. COVID has just pushed and makes this ICT more mandatory than before. However, and as I said, it should be a balance with the traditional audit way, because the machine should not replace the human. And as I said, it's very important for an auditor to be on the shop floor, to smell, to hear, to speak with the people who are doing day by day the food safety. And we need that, and we need to for the culture to progressively integrate this ICT into the culture of all the factory for the auditing. But what we have to make it sure is that it should be a question of balance. It's a case for many things, but for auditing, it's also the case. What we can be sure is that now, after the COVID, for sure, some ICT have been adopted, which was not always the case before. And remote audit will remain, but adapted. Why? Because remote audit are well adapted for macro. Remote audit can be a first step for an audit also, because that reduces the time spent on the shop floor. And that can be a good first step of an audit, especially in a specific situation. I would say we need at the short notice to evaluation of the factory. Remote audit is a good opportunity. It's also very well adapted when the auditor knows already the factory. It's much more difficult. The auditor don't know the factory. But when the auditor knows the factory perfectly well, remote audit can be an efficient way to have an answer very quickly and to be efficient. Also, that can stay as a good way for a follow-up of audit, for make sure that continuous improvement is ongoing. So as a conclusion, how the audit system has evolved during the pandemic, it was, I would say, that the audit remain. What is sure is that audit is very important for the food safety management review as closing the loop, as the last step of the verification. That remains, and that is shows that during the pandemic, the pandemic was a good accelerator to embed the ICT into the processus of audit. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Very good insights on this RCT with the situation of the pandemic. You actually answered a lot of my question, and I also have some question. So for the RCT, you mentioned about some of the advantage and the disadvantage. So how we can improve RCT in the future?
For sure, I believe we never come back in the past. So that means ICT will remain our daily tools for audit. So that means that won't replace for sure all the audit on site. That is for sure. I don't think that next audit will be done with virtual glasses, for sure. Nevertheless, I think that partial remote audit can be a real tools for efficiency for companies.
Okay, thank you.
It's a balance.
Yeah, I totally agree. you think any of the technology can help the remote auditing? Is that possible?
Yes, can help with more, I would say, to facilitate sometimes, as I said, the connection, because what was easy to do is the audit of the documentation system of the food safety management system. That was easy, like we do currently. We exchange, and it's possible we can exchange. What is more difficult for a food safety audit on the shop floor is to be really on the production, on the production area, with all the noise, with the steam, with everything. It's difficult for an auditor to perceive all the sense, to hear, to smell, to see. And it's not easy up to now, even with all the ICT and the good ICT, it's difficult to have connection on the shop floor in all the countries. It's difficult.
Yes.
You cannot see very well. So it's still difficult for observing on the shop floor how the process is done.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you. Any question?
Any question from the online guest or from our on-site?
好，那我们没有看到问题，那我们谢谢Stephanie. Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Thank you. 好，那我们今天最后一位演讲嘉宾。
Now let's proceed to the last keynote speech.
陈坤那他要给我们分享的
Mr. Chen Kun.
内容是益生菌株标准鉴定。
And his topic is probiotic strain technology research application. And he substituted Yao Su to deliver this presentation. Now I will give a floor to Mr. Chen Kun.
很可惜呢，姚主任
So Yao Su was the speaker, and I will substitute Yao Su to deliver this presentation. And the content of this presentation is about the research application of identification and characteristic technology for prebiotics at the strain level. This is the agenda. First is the standard and regulation of probiotics. The second, identification of prebiotics. The third is characteristics of prebiotics. So let's look at the involvements of the definition of probiotics.
生态益生菌呢，它是从1956年开始呢，到迄今呢，目前是有非常多的这个定义。
There are a number of definitions starting from 1965.
普遍被认可的定义呢，是在2001年的时候，由 FAO 和 WHO 所发布的。
And in 2001, the WHO announced the concept of probiotics.
当我们摄取适当的量的时候，能够对于宿主的健康呢产生有益影响。
Probiotics-based health food refer to the macro-ecological that can promote the ecological balance of in intestinal flora and have a beneficial effect on the host. And it's benefit our health. And is active macrobiotics. So in this guideline, they gives a definition of probiotics. So we can evaluate the prebiotics with several standards. On the right hand side, first we need to identify the prebiotics. And the second is to assess their functionality and the safety of the probiotics. And to evaluate the characteristics. These are quite essential. And there are some amendments in regard of FAO and the WHO working group standards. And IPO, which is the International Prebiotics Organization, they have issued another guideline. And we need to verify the capability of the strain. And the second is, and we need to describe the characteristics of prebiotics. And which including whether will facilitate or stimulate the discharge, and the acid resistance and the biosalt tolerance. And we also need to assess the functionality and the safety of the prebiotics. And in China, the prebiotics that are used in the children food or in the food areas are clearly stabled. And here are the standard regulation of prebiotics. And they are the species for the use of the foodstuff. And this is a list of approved prebiotic species for use of infant food. And they are a strain level, and they have the Latino name, and they also come with the strain number. So categorize them down to the different strain level and the strain numbers. In 2005, China State Food and Drug Administration issued 2 guidance, which stated prebiotics and phygo microorganisms that can be used in healthy foods. And the prebiotics and phagos can be used in health food. And in 2009, and the government authority has issued another guidance to update the contents, and they required the enterprises to submit more applications and documents. And you need to provide the genus name, species name, and the strain number. and string identification reports. In this page, there are two standards issued in 2005 and 2019 respectively. And there are a lot of changes from the two periods of time.
So actually the probiotics should be the live bacteria, and also going to provide some of the safety identification documents. This is the first part of my speech. Next, I'd like to talk about the identification of the probiotics. So this slide shows that the probiotics has also provided some requirements of the identification. Just as the WHO documents we just mentioned, as well as our country's regulation requirements. So in addition to submitting an application material in accordance with the regulation on the registration and filling of the house foods, so we have to talk about the identification of probiotics by the gene, species, and strain. So the term species as applied to the bacteria has been defined as a distinct group of strains that have certain distinguishing features and that generally bear a close resemblance to one another in the more essential features of organization. So what is the strain identification? So based on the existing classification system, the photypics and the geotypics identification technology are used to determine the key characteristics of the microorganisms. So we can have two different classifications. So the VERTAC2 compact and the VERTAC2 compact automated ID or AST system. So we're going to have the different categories, including the biolog, the multi-TOF, and fatty acid analysis system, and etc. And we also can divide them into the several aspects according to the functions and species. So currently the identification and the validation varies from each other. And identification technology at a species level has several categories, including API, the VERTAC2, biolog, MediTOF, and fatty acid analysis system. And we also have the RNA gene sequencing and the MLST. So apart from that, we also have some conventional measures at string level. So actually WGS has proposed the minimal standards for use of the genome data for the taxonomy for the prokaryotes. So this is based on the DNA, which is very stabilized. The WGS identification at the strain level is a very useful classification method. And we also use the NI method and to differ the nucleotide states at the same set of 2 or more WGS. So we can, through these feasible methods, to determine the strain can be included or not. Our traditional methods includes the SMP and the whole genome molecular sequence typing, which is WGMLST, or the sequences of last K in the whole genome sequence. They are very traditional. And the first method is based on the SMP's analysis of standard reference sequence. And the amount is less, we can just get a connection or the comparison between different strains. The second method is a kind of typing method based on the core genome and incorporates more the alleles. The third method is based on the Kimmer's SMP's analysis. So these 3 methods are the WGS identification at strain level, which are very important. So currently I'm going to share with you 2 examples. I'd like to share with you one of them. First one is species level ANI analysis. And this is a very usual part of the probiotics. And we selected 10 strains. For example, we can see the code from 1 to 10. And also compare with other 2 strains. And NI analysis shows that the ANI can amount to more than 99%. So these 10 strains analysis from the right-hand side, this is the SMP data, and the comparison between the SMP and strains is more than 200. So these strains can be identified through the SMP. So last part is the characterization of probiotics. So I mentioned many times the documentary by the WHO or FAO, and we should attach great importance to some very important features of probiotics. For example, the resistance to the gastric acidity and the bile acid resistance, or the adherence to the mucus or the human cells and cell lines. So currently, the probiotics has its own functions. For example, the dietary supplement has the function of digestion. So some probiotic supplements have several functions, like can help your immune system and the bacteria of your digestion, or the specific health claims on food be a lot relating to the use of probiotics.
关注到微生物它产生的一些特殊的酶类或者是活性物质，以及对于
And through the function evaluation,
方面来发掘微生物的它的一个特性。
we can see the characteristics of the microbiology. From the genotypics analysis, for example, the DNA sequencing, the RNA sequencing, or the GSMS, and we can get a better understanding of the function exploration. So the data of the DNA sequencing and RNA sequencing can be used widely, which can promote the development or the health of our intestinal flora. Next, we'd like to talk about the safety of the probiotics. For example, the antibiotics resistance patterns and the certain metabolic activities. We had some thoughts of the antibiotics resistance from the speeches previously. And it has the certain systems to resist the antibiotics. It has many reasons, like antibiotic resistance. So we can find the answers from the DNA perspective. And currently, the database of resistant genes is very big. So we can just compare the data and to inspect if our probiotics has some antibiotics resistance. So apart from that, the toxicity is also very important. So the database of the toxigenic genes includes the adhesion or invasion, secretion system, toxin, or the iron acquisition. Last, I'd like to deliver a summary. So first, probiotics are live microorganisms that, when administered in adequate amounts, confer health benefits on the host. Second, probiotics should be identified at least at species level. So if the strain level is required, probiotics should be identified at strain level. So the function and safety of the probiotics are different at strain level. Function and safety evaluation should be implemented at strain level. Fourth, the evaluation of probiotics, the virulence gene, resistance gene, and the pathogenic genes should refer to the updated database and carry out a comprehensive safety evaluation combined with potential risks and clinical risks. Last but not least, most probiotics products contain multiple strains. So the development of accurate identification and evaluation techniques for the probiotics under the background of mixed strains is of greater upflip capability. So we're going to attach great importance to it in the future. That's my speech. Thank you. Thank you for your sharing. So actually, the probiotics industry in China is flourishing in China, especially under the epidemic, and more and more people attach great importance to the body, the health, the immune system. So from the international level, we also have some related research on it.
Question to you. I've seen your presentation is quite thorough, and a lot of them are fundamental research. So what is the implication to the food factory? And how could you help the food factory? Because a lot of delegates here are from food industry. Thank you for your question. Our presentation seems is unrelated with your area, but actually it's closely related to the food industry. And the prebiotics is highly used in yogurt, and probiotic is macrobiotics. Will that benefit your health? And there are a lot of application and promotion for the probiotics. And the safety of the prebiotics is also very important. And for some of the strain, and some of them are integrated during industrialization. And will them to obtain the original strain in the database and to recover their production. Some of the strain, and there is some instability of inherited, because the structure of the strain is not stable either. Say for some of the probiotics, so we'll do some SMT construction, and we'll compare the structure of the strain and to look at the stability of the strain. And thank you for your answer. So we have concluded the 7 keynote speech. So we successfully concluded this afternoon session. You probably got other questions. You can leave your question in the Zoom text box, where you can connect our organizer for further exchange and communication. And thank you, our 7 speakers, for your presentation. And thanks for the interpreter and the technical supports. And the translation and interpretation are not an easy task. Any question from the floor? Any question from Maggie? I don't have any questions. Thank you. Thank you for staying with us. See you tomorrow.